As the U.S. President Donald Trump's approval rating sinks to historic lows, the administration finds its domestic backing fading fast. Meanwhile, support among white voters, a cornerstone of his base, has shrinked. As this erosion deepens at home, what are the reasons behind it? And can the president rebuild credibility, especially among the main group of his electorate? And how will the drop among core voter blocs influence the next chapter of the U.S. foreign policy strategy? I'm Salma Al-Fiki, and welcome to In Depth. And according to Newsweek, the U.S. President Donald Trump's approval rating among white voters has fallen to its lowest point of his second term, reflecting growing unease within his main base of support. A new Economist YouGov poll shows that more than white voters now disapprove than approve of his performance, marking a significant shift for a group that has long backed him. Overall, Trump's national approval has also dropped to its weakest level since returning to office. The survey found that many Americans are unhappy with how he is handling major issues such as the economy, inflation, and immigration. Analysts told Newsweek that persistent inflation, the ongoing government shutdown, the tariff uncertainty, and controversy over a costly White House reconstruction project have all contributed to the decline. They say the drop in support among white voters could spell real trouble for Trump and the Republican Party ahead of next year's midterm elections. And according to the Washington Post, a new Washington Post-ABC News poll shows that most Americans disapprove of Trump's job performance and believe he has gone too far in expanding presidential powers. His approval rating stands at 41%, with 59% disapproving, the highest level of disapproval since January 2021. Majorities rate his handling of the economy, tariffs, immigration, and the federal government negatively, though opinions are more divided on Israel and Gaza. Many Americans also oppose his moves to deploy the National Guard in cities and to lay off federal employees. Despite broad discontent, the poll finds no major advantage for Democrats ahead of the 2026 midterms, with voters nearly evenly split between the two parties. Both Trump and the major parties are viewed as out of touch with ordinary Americans, underscoring widespread frustration with leadership as the country grapples with inflation, immigration debates, and political polarization.
In a new Economist YouGov poll, U.S. President Donald Trump's approval rating has dropped to 47%, with 50% disapproving, the lowest level since he returned to office, putting Trump's net approval rating at -3 points. The fall is especially striking among white voters, once the backbone of Trump's electoral base. Their support has eroded noticeably in recent surveys, signaling a broader discontent that extends beyond party lines. A decline in support among white voters, who represent the largest share of the U.S. electorate, could pose significant challenges for Trump and the Republican Party in the upcoming midterm elections. The poll finds voters rate the president poorly in major issues, namely jobs, the economy, inflation, and immigration. Economic strain, persistent inflation, and uncertainty from on and off tariffs are cited as central drivers of the slide. The ongoing federal government shutdown is reducing support among affected voters. Also, the administration's immigration crackdown and the controversy over the White House East Wing demolition for a proposed $300 million ballroom have further dented approval. The findings signal a deepening public frustration with both economic management and political priorities, leaving President Trump facing the most fragile support of his second term.
And for more analysis, we are joined from Washington by Ms. Ginger Chapman, the lawyer and political analyst, and Mr. Justin Thomas Russell, the executive director of the Global Foreign Policy Center. Welcome, and thank you so much for joining me here today. I'll start with Ms. Chapman. As we can see, recent polls show a sharp drop in President Trump's approval ratings, especially among the white voters. What does this decline, do you think, reveal about the public confidence in his leadership?
Well, first, thank you, Salma, for having us today, and greetings to your other guests and to your viewers. And what we have seen is a remarkable, almost unprecedented drop in President Trump's approval ratings since January. And this is not just amongst his white voters. This is also amongst the voters that came to Trump during the last election that were unusual. For example, young voters. What we have seen, and what's really remarkable, is this is not just liberal left-leaning polls such as the Washington Post, CNN, Mediaite. These are also right-leaning conservative polls such as Rasmussen. Rasmussen is also showing President Trump has a negative 8 points approval rating overall with the general public. But this is coming down to those identifiable voting blocks. For example, young people, voters aged 18 to 30 have seen the most significant drop in approval for Trump. Back in February, 50% of voters under 30 approved of Trump. That was 1 out of 2, half the voters. And now his approval rating among young people has dropped to 20%. So many voters, young people, Black voters, Hispanic voters that were in the working class that moved from Trump.
Ms. Chapman, why do you think there's this drop?
Well, what we are seeing is Trump campaigned on promises to end wars, to focus on America, prosperity at home by guaranteeing peace abroad. And what we have seen is chaos. We've seen chaos in the streets of America with the ICE raids, with protests, with the events in Gaza where the Trump administration quashed free speech protests. And then we've also seen overseas, Trump has funneled money to Israel for their war campaign. We just gave $40 billion to Argentina, which hurt our farmers. So American people are seeing that Trump is spending much money abroad on his foreign projects, and we're seeing chaos in the form of tariffs, rising prices, inflation. So essentially, the American people want Trump to focus on his campaign promises with the prosperity at home rather than creating chaos, conflict, and higher prices abroad, which are now coming back to unrest in the American streets.
Yes. Mr. Russell, as I was asking Ms. Chapman, Trump's approval among white voters has reached its lowest point since returning to office. Why do you think is this particular demographic turning away from him now, in your opinion?
Well, Selma, it's basically because he's turned his back on the people that elected him. You know, look, a large part of the Trump base were the people that felt like they were underrepresented, that they were disaffected. And now what's happening is Trump has just basically smacked them across the face with everything from, as Ms. Chapman pointed out, you know, bailouts to Argentina. Well, you know, you got your own farmers to deal with here. You've got your own constituents. That's a problem. You know, as Ginger pointed out, you know, we've got chaos here. And the bigger thing about this is, and this is going to be huge, is the tone deaf nature of Donald Trump has basically driven a wedge between the people that got him elected and didn't. The biggest numbers are the moderates and the independents who helped get him elected, because he ran on, look, the economy stinks right now. I'm going to make the economy better. He hasn't made the economy better through his tariff tirades, through his basically blindness when it comes to inflation and economic prowess, and the fact that he's got less than a stellar team behind him on his economic policies. This is what is driving the American political climate right now, and it's basically driving his polling numbers into the ground.
Ms. Chapman, despite the low approval, voter preferences for Congress still remain closely divided. Why do you think the dissatisfaction with Trump isn't fully translating into broader Republican losses?
Well, that remains to be seen. The midterm elections are in 2026. They are a year away, and this is a lifetime in political time. And what we have seen is that the Republicans in Congress are also divided, and Trump has a very interesting coalition. The Republicans that elected him were sort of maverick Republicans. They were anti-establishment. They did not want politics and business as usual. So these were the Republicans that were turning against Lindsey Graham and his warmongering and the military-industrial complex. And we saw Republicans that were more moderate. For example, J.D. Vance and Tulsi Gabbard, who left the Democrat Party to join the Republicans because she was attracted to Trump's message of moderation and peace. And this also highlights that many white Democrat voters who were anti-war, that supported Robert F. Kennedy Jr., voted for Trump on that basis. And now those voters are also disillusioned because they are seeing that once again, Trump ran on a message of peace, and he wound up escalating the wars in the Middle East. We bombed Iran. We are now bombing boats off the coast of Venezuela. This is becoming an increasingly volatile controversy. Many Republicans feel that this is in violation of our Constitution, the War Powers Act, in contravention of congressional approval. We are also seeing Republicans pushing back against Trump's tariffs. Even though the government is closed, several Republicans managed to vote against Trump's tariffs. Also, this Wednesday, this week, the Supreme Court is going to be ruling on the constitutionality of Trump's tariffs, whether he has the authority to impose that. This could make his economic program even more chaotic. So we are seeing increased escalating war drums being banged in Venezuela, now talk of perhaps Colombia, Cuba. We have not resolved any of the issues in the Middle East. Those appear to be escalating. We have not solved Ukraine in 24 hours. So American voters are looking askance at President Trump, at his campaign promises and his actions. At the same time, as you mentioned, he is building a beautiful ballroom, not with taxpayer money. However, the optics do not look good. And then he was also bragging about redoing the Lincoln bathroom in marble, which was appropriate for the era. We know this is because Trump came back from his visit to the Middle East. He saw the glorious marble palaces there. And this is what he is thinking of instead of the well-being of the American people.
Mr. Russell, still on the same topic, polls suggest that while many white voters disapprove of Trump, they still lean Republican. How do you explain that contradiction?
Well, I mean, it's very simple. They can lean Republican. Look, we've got two big governor's races that could set the standard for the midterms, which could be kind of a bellwether for what the Republicans are going to look at maybe going into the election cycle in 28. You've got the governor's race here in Virginia. between Abigail Spanberger and the current Lieutenant Governor Winsome Sears. And then you've got New Jersey, where you've got an incumbent member of Congress and a incumbent Republican politician in New Jersey, where Mickey and could actually lose, and the Republicans could win. The dynamic that we're seeing here is that the Republicans that matter are the ones that sit there and they talk about, they're more focused on the kitchen table politics. The ones that say, can I put food on my table to feed my family? Can I keep a roof over my head to protect my family? Yeah. Is there a national security initiative that will keep my family safe? Those are the issues that are keeping, and those are the issues that keep Republicans. What they cannot deal with is the showboating and the tone deaf and the absolute contradictions in policy, where in one side you are going up in front of a camera saying, I'm going to protect you, I'm going to save you, I'm going to make you richer and more affluent than you've ever thought in your wildest dreams. Yep. And yet, to some of those people who still have to qualify for SNAP benefits, the food stamps program, and they lost their benefits while Donald Trump is having a Great Gatsby ball, that you could not pick a worse opportunity to drive your own party voters away from you, but still stay with the party. And that's what I think we're seeing here right now. I think the cracks in the armor of Donald Trump being the Republican Party god are starting to fall apart, and we're starting to see a move away from just the party of Trump back to some of the basics of the Republican Party. That's at least, if I was a Republican, that's what I would hope for.
Yeah. Ms. Chapman, some analysts link the decrease in popularity to the government shutdown and economic uncertainty. How much do you think of these domestic issues shape how the Americans currently view the president?
Well, this shutdown appeared to take the American people by surprise, especially the length, the duration, and the severity of the shutdown. And this, to the American people, is one more indication that Donald Trump is not omnipotent. He cannot control the government. He cannot control his own Republican Party in Congress. This is leading to civil war battles within the Republican Party over elements of our foreign policy and our domestic policy. Republicans rule over states that have incredibly poor white populations as well as wealthy populations. So this government shutdown, and especially the optics of President Trump being abroad, going to trade conferences and international summits. At the same time, the government, our own government here at home, is shut down, signals to the American people that he is not focusing his attention at home to the extent that he should be. We know and understand President Trump has international obligations. However, this is a crisis time in America, and many of the issues that in our system that have been broken for a long time are coming to a head right now. Specifically, our healthcare system is broken. The Affordable Care Act subsidies have been growing out of control. This needs to be resolved. And American people were very surprised at the number of Americans on food stamp benefits, 42 million Americans. Wow. We realized that the number increased dramatically under the Biden administration. Yes. So there are many economic indicators that are alarming the American people. Young people cannot afford to buy homes. Grocery prices are still increasing. They're 25% higher than they were 4 years ago. Yes. And insurance is becoming unaffordable, not just health insurance, but also home insurance. So there are a great many economic issues that Trump needs to deal with at home. One thing that has changed that Trump doesn't seem to realize is Generations ago, Americans would join a political party and they would stay in that party until they would die. If they were a Democrat, they would vote Democrat until they died. If they were Republican, same thing. What we are seeing now is Americans, especially younger Americans, are willing to cross political lines to vote. They are willing to change political parties if they do not like the direction the political party is going. So this is something Trump needs to be very aware of.
So this is a huge change apparently now.
Exactly. All of these voters are loyal to what Trump said, but they're willing
parties.
to. Exactly, Salma. Thank you.
Yeah. Mr. Russell, do you think Trump still enjoys support within his own MAGA base? I mean, despite the decline in his approval rates. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, you know what? I mean, the indications are that, once MAGA, always MAGA. I think, is there some erosion? Yeah, I think there is some erosion. When you talk America first, how do you spend so much time having accolades brought to you by foreign leaders and spending so much time overseas when you've got problems here at home? I think they might get a little bit disappointed in Trump, but I think the MAGA is going to be the MAGA base. We might see a little bit of erosion in that. They do treat him kind of as a minor deity. What I would say though is that the ones that were MAGA leaning are the ones that he is losing and losing at rapid pace. You look at some of the latest polling, as we pointed out earlier, even a RMG Research, which has largely been looked at as a wholly owned subsidiary of the Trump campaign, has Donald Trump for the first time underwater. And I never would have thought that I would have seen those numbers from them. Donald Trump could have literally run down Pennsylvania Avenue screaming like a lunatic, and they'd still have him up. And yet, for the first time, we're seeing RMG Research come back and saying, no, people actually disapprove of him. That's a big telltale sign where we're starting to see the MAGA leaning drive away from him. Now, the big question here, Salma, is can the Democrats take advantage of this? The Democrats right now have an absolute talent for snatching defeat out of certain victory. They don't have a plan. There's criticism within the party that they don't have any idea of which way's forward. They don't have a clear, young, vibrant leader like they had in maybe Barack Obama or a Bill Clinton. That person doesn't exist right now. They got to find that quick if they're going to try and, at minimum, offset the Trump train. At best, have any possible leaning towards winning in the midterms in 26 or winning back the White House in 2028.
Ms. Chapman, the polls suggest that concerns about inflation and SNAP benefits cut off are driving disapproval. Do you see this as a temporary reaction or maybe a more deeper economic backlash and maybe more permanent?
Well, the root causes of this recent controversy are not going away. They are deep. So the concerns about our SNAP program, our welfare benefits, our health insurance subsidies, those are not issues that can just be resolved right away with one continuing resolution or 1 year's budget. These are issues that have deeply divided the American people, including the Republican Party, for decades, and they are getting worse. They are not getting better, and they do need to be resolved. One of the things your other guest, Justin, mentioned is that the Democrat Party has an incredible opportunity right now to distinguish themselves from the Republicans and state what they want to do to help American citizens, their normal constituency, the poor, the downtrodden, the misfits, as well as the elites. However, they're not capitalizing on this. The Democrats are still in a disarray over the last election. Their leaders are still trying to figure out what happened with Kamala Harris's candidacy. The rank and file Democrats are in a disarray. They want to resist Trump more than anything, so they cannot articulate any policy proposals that they stand for other than resistance to Trump. And at the same time, what's really remarkable is the Republican Party is having a deep civil war, and this is completely over Israel. This is unprecedented and phenomenal. However, the Republican Party is divided into a America First MAGA camp versus the Israel First MEGA, Make Israel Great Again camp. And we are seeing a battle between public figures such as Senator Ted Cruz, Senator Lindsey Graham, journalist Mark Levin, Laura Loomer, are now attacking Republicans such as Tucker Carlson, Marjorie Taylor Greene, even Steve Bannon, Trump's longtime personal friend and spokesperson. So there is a civil war in the Republican Party between the Israel First and America First that is now consuming the Republican Party and rendering them as much in a disarray as the Democrats. And one thing is, to use an old expression, the American eagle needs two wings to fly. We need the Democrat Party and we need the Republican Party, and both parties are in a disarray at this time.
Mr. Russell, how much of this decline do you attribute to economic performance versus the political tone and rhetoric?
Well, one kind of leads into the other, Selma. I mean, look, we could say that, you know, in large part, this is economic based. I mean, you know, you talk to any sensible economist here in Washington or even anywhere in the world, they'll tell you that, you know, the economic drivers, such as inflation, are being done because of the tariff tirade. And if you don't have a tariff tirade and you don't have these huge trade wars, particularly with the likes of China and Canada, the economic numbers might be different. We might be in a better economic position. We might not see the inflation, but it's the rhetoric that Donald Trump of look, I'm a deal maker. I can make these deals, and we're getting played on the global stage, and everybody sees it. And as a result of being played, like we saw in the in the Busan meeting last week, Donald Trump didn't walk away there the victor. The victor was Xi Jinping. Xi Jinping has been coming into these, quote, talks with Donald Trump from a position of advantage every single time. And every single time, we don't come back any better. You know, we get little tiny scraps from the table, such as the raw earth, deal. But all in all, we're not seeing any progress to reduce inflation, make the economy stronger, increase our position in the global economy, let alone increase our economic numbers here within the United States. We're not growing manufacturing capability because we don't have the infrastructure or the workforce to do that. And quite frankly, all of the people that are playing these Jedi mind tricks on Donald Trump, such as, he goes over to Japan and says, oh, look, Toyota's going to do $1 billion worth of investment here in the United States. Well, Toyota may say that just so they don't tariff the living, the living daylights out of their vehicles that they have to bring in with parts from other parts of the world. But, and also you don't want ICE raiding one of their facilities, as we saw in the Hyundai situation in Georgia. So, we're seeing all of this kabuki dance in economic policy, and it doesn't make sense. It doesn't work, and it's all jazz hands. It's all political theater. We're not going to see a Toyota factory built in the next 2 years under a Trump administration. And the other factor here is they see Trump and his family getting richer and richer and getting richer and richer off the backs of American people. That is going to be a real reality check for not only Republicans that support Donald Trump, but for America as a whole. We're going to have to atone for this.
With that, I'd like to thank Ms. Ginger Chapman, the lawyer and political analyst, and Mr. Justin Thomas Russell, the executive director of the Global Foreign Policy Center. Thank you so much for being here with me at In Depth. And this brings us to the end of today's episode for In Depth. And thank you so much for joining us. And stay tuned for more updates on Q News.